Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
I would like you all to give a warm welcome to our main speaker tonight, Bill McD.
Hi, everybody. I want to thank my friend Duncan and my friend Faith for asking me to come and share. It's always a privilege to participate in the meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. And this Friday, it's like I feel like peanut butter today, you know, and I don't feel sincere at all. And I want to thank the people who took birthday cakes and Lisa for talking. And you know, I forget, you know, that the wonderment, what it was like when I was when this thing works, you know. And it's just you know, I've been sober since March the 15th, 1974, and I didn't come in here. I didn't come into Alcoholics Anonymous full of any kind of sincerity. I came basically to get the heat off. You know, they were looking at me funny again, and I had plenty of evidence, a lot of written evidence that I had a problem with alcohol, and I mean lots of written evidence. And I had a lot of verbal evidence from people I was from friends, family, and court officials, and that I had a problem with alcohol. My boss had come by a couple of weeks earlier, and he had this file on his hands. You know, Mac, you've had a lot of tragedy in your life, haven't you, recently? I said, what do you mean? He says, you've lost 5 grandparents in the last year and a half, you know? You know, and they all die on weekends, you know? and lost a sense of humor, but it was never, I couldn't, and people for years, I drank for about 9 years and 11 months and 2 weeks. And I started drinking when I was a junior in college over here in Long Beach. Now, I'd had drinks before. I come from an Irish and German background, which is a disease all unto itself. You know, being Irish and German, and part of you wants to be absolutely efficient in everything that you do, and the rest of you is a little bit too laid back to get started, you know. And you have a profound sense of irony too, but which is also a disease. But and you know, I'd had sips and drinks and all this other stuff, but that stuff did not kick into me for me until I was a junior in college over here at Long Beach, and for me it was a transforming experience. It was probably, and I didn't realize at the time, anything I say about myself and is in hindsight and having reflected upon it through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, because I certainly didn't realize it at the time. But I look back on that, and it totally transformed me. It transformed my life, my opinions. It just totally changed me. Now, I come from this average working lower middle class family out from behind an orange curtain, and I was raised out in Huntington Beach and Newport were just little towns, you know, and the beach cities, and in Anaheim and Buena Park, and went to high school there and college out in that area, and you know, and I wasn't raised by wolves. I have nobody to blame, you know. I was at a meeting the other day, and this friend of mine was talking about, you know, being horribly abused by his family, and horribly abused in schools, and going through this awful experience in Vietnam, you know, and we're sitting, he said, almost wheezing with this tragedy, you know, and we went to coffee. I says, John, I had none of that experience. I had this loving, kind, supportive family. Had every opportunity that they could afford and more. And I was in the I knew John Wayne never got out of Culver City, so I was in the Navy over in Vietnam. And I said, I have none of those experiences. And I said, but I'm here too, which means to me that it absolutely has nothing to, that kind of experience has absolutely, my background, my experience prior to coming to Alcoholics Anonymous has nothing to do with the disease of alcoholism, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just here. I am, and I have nobody to blame, when I was new, I felt kind of story deficient, and I just really was amazed by these stories about people, I mean, hell, even today, you have people taking cakes for 15 years were slamming battery acid when they were 4, I'm an alcoholic, I've been sober for 8 years, and I'm 9, and geez, how can you can't compete with that kind of stuff? You have to really work it one up, and all that podium flash, but that's all it is. But I'm here to tell you, though, and everybody here has time, but I know what my experience has been prior to coming here, and my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous is I wasted a lot of time in Alcoholics Anonymous trying to find a reason why. There is no chapter entitled Why, Why are we here? It just says exactly what it is, how it works, But anyway, I'm even confused now. But anyway, by the time I got here, I'd ruined my relationship with anything that moved in my life. From the time that I was at that party it was about 1963, and I was at this Lenin birthday party with a bunch of other pseudo-intellectuals. Nikolai Lenin, not John, and I have to qualify that now. I've gotten so old, but these people I was hanging out with, I'd fallen into this group of people who were all radicals, underlying quotation marks, and we were the last of the carefully aged, new tweed jacket, Camel cigarette smoking intellectual crowd, So it was just so silly, And for the first time that stuff kicked in, from the time that stuff worked for the first time in my life, from the time that I had that transforming experience behind alcohol, within 6 months, my life, as I knew it, up to that point, was totally changed, And I can honestly say that within a year of the time that I came into Alcoholics Anonymous, by my experience in Alcoholics Anonymous, my life was totally changed. I mean, every dream that I had, by the time I started chasing the tail of that dragon, I knew what happened with me when I drank. I felt better. I felt a part of. I felt something. William James, in his Variety of Religious Experience, there's a little chapter he talks about drinking, and it's a profound. I find what he says is really profound, because when he talks about, he says, some people, when they drink alcohol, and then he talks about other substances that, nitric oxide and other stuff, that cause a profound sense of the presence of the grandeur of God in their life when they drink. And then he also goes on to say, unfortunately, it kills you if you drink too much of it, And then people would say, why do you have to drink like that, Bill? And I wasn't even aware that I was having these profound spiritual experiences behind the drinking that I did. I grew up, and I grew up feeling apart from and isolated from and separate from the people around me. But what I felt was no different than what my sister felt, exactly the same way. She's not an alcoholic. When I was a year sober, she called me up in tears because she tried to go to a party and drink to get drunk so she could go to AA and feel like I did, But she's not an alcoholic. She had a couple of drinks and she burped or something, I just don't like the taste. I said, try harder, Work hard, work at it, And And so my sponsor for a couple of weeks was her unofficial non-AA sponsor. She was doing all the things that these sponsors do when they're brand new. She did it for 2 weeks. She got out of her depression. He's never heard a word from her since. That was 27 years ago, you know, and she's doing just fine. I don't know what it is, why I'm here, or why you're here. I mean, but I know what happened. I drank. Alcohol put me in jail. It ruined. The last time I saw my father alive, he died. I walked into a hospital room. He lay taking oxygen through a mask. He took the mask away from his face long enough to curse me because I was drunk one more time. You're nothing but a disgusting goddamn drunk, you know? You know, last time I saw my mother alive a few years before, the Navy had flown me off my ship so I could be with her when she died. I was home for 3 days while she's writhing in agony from a terminal disease. And I couldn't get past Coco's Polynesian Tiki Hut because it was more important for me to drink than it was to be by her bedside. By the time I got there, she lapsed into a coma and died while I was there, you know. And it's not like I didn't want to do it. I did it, you know, because I had to do it. I had to drink, looking back in hindsight, because it was more important for me to drink at that time. It's not a moral weakness, the reason I did that. It's part of the disease of alcoholism, as far as I've come to understand it anyway. But for the time that in the 9 years and 11 months that I drank prior to coming into Alcoholics Anonymous, you know, I had jobs, you know, I had responsibilities, and at the same time I was living like 3 different lives at the same time, with 3 separate worlds, you know, desperately trying to hold on to this job and desperately trying to keep up with my drinking, you know. And then there's something in the middle too, you know. And I drank in blackouts for most of the time that I drank. Not all the time, not very much of the time, but I mean, the last time that I drank prior to coming to this program, I'd lost my license for a year and walked for a year most of the time. Got 86 off of the buses in Long Beach for a while, and got arrested for drunken hitchhiking one time on 7th Street in Long Beach. You know, I was declared by policemen one time to be a public pest, you know. You don't know who I am, you know. I'm a big deal on the astral plane, and I gotten off the probation, and this is after my dad had died, and there was a little money in the bank, so I was running around becoming the King Farouk of parts of Orange County. People would cheer when I walked in, you know, all my friends, and then I was in this accident, and I think this accident probably saved my life because I was on my back for about 6 weeks, and I got back on my feet after the accident, and was involved in an accident. I wasn't even drinking. It really annoyed the hell out of me, but I was riding in a car, and this guy, I was involved in a head-on collision, and they had the jaws of life and all this other stuff pulling it apart. But I was on this run at the time that was just going to kill me if I hadn't stopped. And I was on my back for about 8 weeks. And after I got back on my feet, I started off again on this run. And in the last time that I drank, I think it probably best describes what my drinking was like. I'd been good for a couple of days, and I had celebrated Tuesday and had lost my car. So I spent a day and a half wandering around Long Beach trying to find my car, and I found it parked in my garage, which was a whole new religious experience that had never happened before. And I stayed good for another day, and then on that Saturday afternoon, I took off to go and see my sister out in Orange County. And I had not had a drink for a day and a half. And I stopped off at a place that's called the 49er on 7th Street in Long Beach, and I had a beer. A big one, but it was just a beer. And I got in the car, and I started going into a blackout. And I'd been drinking in blackouts for almost 10 years. And so, I mean, blackouts really, you know, it's like Lisa was saying, you know, I hear about people went into a blackout and came out of it and playing Baccarat and Monte Carlo, you know. I came out of blackouts and go-go bars in Torrance, you know, and you know, I came out of blackouts ordering a hamburger someplace, you know, and I mean, came out of blackout one time. I was on a plane, you know, and I had to, you know, and I was in the middle of a conversation with somebody, you know, and all of a sudden there's this poignant pause as all of a sudden your whole life flashes in front of your eyes as you're trying to recollect exactly what the hell's going on so that you can make a comeback statement. And like, how did you enjoy your stay in San Francisco? I said, no, I'm on my way there, thank you. Oh, and, with this one, I'd fade in and out of this blackout. I'd flash into it, I'd come out of it, and I was in a cab going someplace. I flashed back into it, I was back in my car going someplace. I was flashed out of it, came back out of it, I was in the Golden Door on Knott Avenue talking to Sylvie, the oldest go-go girl in the world, and flashed back into it. And I was sitting in the middle of my sister's front room, and I just puked in the middle of her front room. She was screaming at me to get out of her house and out of her life, and flashed back into it, and I was standing at the counter, and El Senor Gordo was on Knott Avenue having a drink, and I had a glass of scotch in my hand. I was just charging it down as fast as I could. There was another one in front of me, and the bartender was laughing and pouring another one. And in that split second, I felt totally apart. I loved everybody in the room. The room was just glowing, you know. The next thing I knew, I was in a cul-de-sac in La Puente, about 15 miles away, with 2 blown-out tires, you know, about 4 o'clock in the morning. You know, I got the car towed, you know. Went back to El Senor Gordo's because I'd left something there. I can't remember what it was, but I went into that place about 10:30 in the morning, had a beer. The next thing I know, it's midnight, and I'm down the street at Coco's Polynesian Tiki Hut, and, you know, passed out at the bar. And I've been drinking all day, you know, carrying on conversations with everybody all day. And I've been doing that for years off and on. You know, so the next day, I knew the walls are coming in real fast. The screws are coming down real quick. So I went into Operation Scam real fast, and I called my friend Bob. Well, he wasn't my friend. He was a guy Judge Miller had ordered me to either go to AA for a year or go to therapy. And so this friend of mine, an Episcopal priest, he recommended this therapist in Long Beach, and I started to see this guy, and I'd go in and talk about therapy, you know, go in and talk about, you know, the stuff you talk to therapists about, you know, how do you feel? Oh, fuck you, you know. You know, so I'm sorry, I got carried away. I've just been bombarded by therapists recently, but how do you feel? You know, and so we talk about everything you talk to therapists about. You know, everything from sex to doorknobs. And you know, if I could live in therapy all the time, I'd do just great. You know, talking about me all day. You know, I'd be desperately trying to make up something to get this guy off my back. So I made up a dream. Asked me about my dreams. You know, so I told him I made up a dream. I don't dream. I'm an alcoholic. I come home and 4 hours later, my heart starts to beat again. You know, and. So I made up a dream, and they accused me of being a homosexual, you know. So if you're straight and going into a therapist, never talk about walking up a brick lane between 2 rows of trees with the sun rising at the end of the path. That means something. And so I hadn't seen this guy for almost 2 years, you know, and I called Bob, and I went to see Bob. I sat there, and he looked at me. He said, "You want to know what's wrong with you?" And I said, "Thank God somebody's asked." No one's ever asked me that question before. They always ask me, "Why do you do this?" And the only answer I can come up with is, and so he pulled out the 20 questions, which is a yellow card. Now it's multicolored with different circumstances of, you know, 20 questions for dwarves and everybody else. And the 20 questions originally has nothing to do with Alcoholics Anonymous. It was used by they were developed by a hospital in the East and adopted by Alcoholics Anonymous to help new people identify, but they were originally used by this hospital in the East to separate the alcoholics from the real people. In that hospital, if you answered 3 or more of those questions, yes, you were treated for alcoholism, and you didn't even have to think about being sincere. You know, you were just treated for it. So I sat there, and he read me these 20 questions. I answered 16 of them yes. He got all excited, you know. And then he shared with me, he said, according to this criteria, you're an alcoholic. I said, well, okay. first thing that went through my mind was, all right, I stopped drinking, what am I going to do with my time, you know? And I have a very busy social schedule, you know? Sometimes it gets crowded in the dumpster behind the red wagon on Cherry Avenue in Long Beach, you know? And and then he shared with me he'd been sober for 11 and a half months, and his wife had been sober for 11 and a half months. They were walking the happy golden road together, and I just said, okay, fine. And then he said that they were sharing a pitch the following Friday, I think this was Wednesday, the following Friday night at Roxbury, the old Roxbury Clubhouse. And they asked me if they could pick me up, they'd take me to the meeting. I said, I was just offended like hell. I said, I have a brand new car out front. What the hell do I need you to pick me up for? I'll meet you there. And thank God I went there. I went to that meeting. And Bob and Seal Gunner, they split a pitch, and it was a it was a great pitch. I came to love these guys. He was my first sponsor in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I wasn't impressed by his pitch. I mean, he talked about the carpenter and, you know, please. And they took me around and introduced me to all these old timers. And some of these people are just, you know, most of them are all dead now, but they're that whole crowd of second generation alcoholics that were around at that time. And just really wonderful people, but I just was not impressed at all. They took me to this one old lady dressed in pink, and she's a meeting manager. Oh, it's so good to see young people get sober again. And I wanted to tell her, I said, just touch me one more time, you old bag, I'll rip your arm off and beat you to death with it, you know. And, but I'm polite. I said, thank you. And I did not identify as a newcomer, so if you're here, welcome. I did identify as an alcoholic. You know, I'm a joiner. And I walked out that night after the meeting, after buying the big book, and I ran into a guy, he came walking up to me, and he was about my size. I think that's why he made the impression that he did. And he was about my age now, I guess, about 60 years old, and he said, you know, I don't know if you're an alcoholic or not, but I've never seen you here before. I just want you to know I've been coming to this group since 1948, and I have 15 months of sobriety today. And I spent millions of dollars and traveled all over the world trying to find happiness in my life. I only found it here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous has given me meaning in my life. And that kind of impressed me. I was touched by the fact he reached out. You know, a total stranger reached out like that and tried to make this connection. And it didn't make any difference. I went home, and the girl next door made appropriate sounds. I scurried over and got gas in the gills one more time. And the next morning it was just another, you know, I was living on Bixby Knolls over there in Long Beach, and it was just blazing, sunny spring day, you know. And my windows hadn't been open for years, you know, and I was just, you know, getting ready to do the whole Saturday, Sunday routine in my bathrobe, you know. So I got up about 7 o'clock, walked down the hall and puked, and came back, looked down at the phone and picked it up and called Bob. And I told him, I said, look, you know, I got drunk last night after that meeting, and I don't know if I can handle these awful people or these meetings or this God stuff, but you know, I just don't want to feel this way anymore. And I hadn't even heard any cliches, you know. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. Maybe if I stop drinking, or you know, I can you know, be able to restore my relationship with my sister. That's all I really wanted. I was terrified that she was going to be out of my life because she was the last person that had any real importance to me in my life. And she had let me know that I could know and that I was completely cut off from her life because she didn't know if she was going to pick up the phone again, and I was going to be locked up again, or in a hospital someplace, or in jail someplace, or killed somebody. And she was just falling. She had nobody left in her life, and I was just, you know, she was just terrified. And so that's how it started. I started going to meetings right after that. The first meeting I went to of Alcoholics Anonymous, sober, was the Big Book group out in Long Beach. And I was supposed to meet Bob, the therapist, who didn't show up. And I walk into this meeting, and it's really funny. It's one of these meetings. It was a huge meeting, it looked like, but the room wasn't any bigger than this. But I remember that room, and I walked into it, and it just seemed enormous, you know. And I walked in and identified as an alcoholic. I stood up and identified. It was one of these rah-rah meetings, you know, where, ah! You know. And at that meeting, Chuck Chamberlain was leading the meeting. It was Johnny Harris's birthday week, and Norm Alpe was giving the main talk. A lot of power at that meeting, and I thought I had died and gone to hell, you know, and I was just, that silly old man was up there giggling to himself. I said, this man has a problem, you know. And So during the break, I was on my way out the door. And I'll tell you about how Alcoholics Anonymous works. There's a big guy, 2 of them, standing at the door, and I come walking out. And this little guy comes walking up to me, a guy named Vern. Now, Vern's been sober about 45 years. He's still doing this, little bastard. And he came up and he said, I saw you put your hand up. I said, yeah. And he said, well, I just want to welcome you. And these 2 goons came up behind him, and, you know, Otto and Thor, you know. And, you know, the AA goon squad, you know. And they said, where are you going? I said, oh, I'm just going to go outside. And he said, well, come here, I'll introduce you to some people. I said, I really don't want to meet them. Thank you very much, though. Oh, come here, we'll get you a cup of coffee. And then Otto and Thor cornering me, you know. And I just wanted to get the hell out of there. So anyway, they got me to stay. And this little Vern, he does this. He's still doing it, you know. Caging newcomers as they're scurrying out the door. He just has a radar for this sort of thing. And he got me to sit down, and Thor and Otto sat on both sides of me, and you will have fun. And Norm Alpe spoke, and I laughed for the first time in meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. Not because of what he said was funny, but because I related to it. You know, he talked about driving down Hollywood Boulevard with the windows rolled up so people would think that he had air conditioning. And we talked about sitting in bars, spending money he didn't have to impress people he didn't like, you know. No, spending money he didn't have to buy things he didn't need to impress people he didn't like. You know, the hair went on the back of my neck. And later, at the end of the meeting, Chamberlain said, you know, if you're new, what we do here, we do for fun and for free. Because if we can't give it away, we can't keep it. And I didn't even know what he meant, but I was struck by something. It appealed to the, you know, the dying idealist in me. And that's how it began for me. I started going to meetings out in Orange County, and I asked Bob, the therapist, to be my sponsor because he told me he was secretary of a meeting. I thought it was a big deal, you know. And so I became his flunky at this meeting out in Costa Mesa, and I was sober there for 9 months, and I started going crazy again. And what I was 9 months sober, you know. And so a friend of mine had changed his venue up here to the west side, and I got another sponsor up here, and I got involved with the Rural Active Group, and I went on another honeymoon because of all the activity and that I was involved with Alcoholics Anonymous. I moved up here and got involved, and really began to really love Alcoholics Anonymous. That was another thing I never thought was going to happen. You know, it was just, well, when I was out in Orange County, I got involved with a bunch of people. We were all about the same age, all about 30, you know, and just crazy, you know. Like on Saturday morning, we'd all meet at this one meeting. I was living in Long Beach. We'd meet at this morning meeting in Huntington Beach and go from there to this 9 o'clock meeting in Garden Grove, then tear across town back up to Costa Mesa for this noon meeting, then roar back to Garden Grove for this 5 o'clock meeting, then roar back out to Laguna for the Canyon Club meeting, then go to the dance afterwards, and then go to the midnight meeting in Costa Mesa, walking around with our eyes like BBs in our heads, you know. At that time, they were still under the influence of Bill Wilson's cockamamie niacin therapy program, and so everybody's walking around with these giant jars of niacin, you know, and mega vitamin therapy. So everybody's walking around this big green cloud of vitamin B odor, you know. I remember calling my sponsor about Bob, I'm having a religious experience. And he said, you crazy son of a bitch, you're just nuts, that's what you are. Stop taking all that goddamn vitamins, it's just driving you crazy. You know? And, but it was just, I look back on it, it was just, I mean, I was touched by what Liza was talking about her first year, you know. I just really, you know, encourage people when they're brand new just to get involved and just throw themselves into this, because it's such a whole totally different experience, you know, such a growing experience. And I changed my venue and moved up here to the west side and got involved again. And I really believe, for me, I mean, I know right now people are writing a lot about the first 3 steps, but I think if you're brand new in Alcoholics Anonymous, and you're sitting in this chair and your mother is sitting out there on the curb, you've effectively taken the first 3 steps of this program. You know, it's just, I believe that the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, there's not a lot of, I have read a lot about Bill Wilson, and he just wasn't that goddamn clever, you know. He wasn't that deep or profound, you know. It's an action-oriented program. This is how it works. That's what it is, you know. He doesn't talk about writing 200 pages on the first step. You know, oh, Jesus. And it's only an opinion, sorry. And but not to get into Baptists and Methodists now, but I mean, it's just a difference of opinion, I guess. But anyway, but I didn't do a 4-step until I was about a little over a year sober. And what had happened, I was at work one day and something kind of snapped, and I just thought it would be a really great idea to do something really severe to this coworker of mine. I called Clancy, and he said, well, I think it's a good idea that you did an inventory. So I did the inventory, and the night I did my 5th step, up to that time I held in reserve that there had to be something else besides alcoholism. It couldn't be, there had to be something deeper than this. It just couldn't be, this could not be it. It could not be a simple solution, the total solution to what my problem was. I mean, my life would totally change after coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. I felt a lot better. I had people in my life. I felt a part of something I never felt before. You know, I felt a connection with a God that I didn't understand. I'd rejected God when I was 15 years old. And it wasn't because of the church I belonged to. It's just because I read a book that just totally destroyed my faith in anything. And but when I did that 5th step, and the way he did the 5th step, I don't know if he still does it that way. You take your inventory, and you get in the car with your flashlight, and you drive up towards Malibu, you know, and you get around Malibu, he says, start reading. So I started reading the inventory, you know, and it was about 20 pages long, I guess, 25 pages long. And I'm going through this, reading this thing, you know, and I said, you know, this thing doesn't have, you know, there was hardly anything about drinking in it. And he said, I'm not interested in listening to your drunk-a-log. I can hear that when you're lying from the podium, but you know. But anyway, something happened around Oxnard, you know, and I was sitting there reading it, and all of a sudden, I was reading that inventory, and all of a sudden, I had this profound sense that this was the answer for me. It was the greatest miracle since I've come into Alcoholics Anonymous. I knew right down to my toenails that this was the answer for me. It was nothing that my sponsor had said. It was nothing that I had read. You know, I had no secrets that I was really afraid of telling. I had written down this stuff because I was desperate to understand myself, you know, and I trusted him. And I just wanted somebody to help me sort things out, you know, because I just felt totally unsorted even then. And but I knew that this was the answer for me, and I have maintained that feeling about Alcoholics Anonymous since I came into this program, since that night. I knew, and I know today, that this is the answer for me. I haven't looked for anything else, you know. I haven't experimented with anything else except Alcoholics Anonymous since I come to this program. And, you know, since then, you know, he said something that night I thought was kind of funny. He said, you know, 4 or 5 years ago, look back at all this stuff and your life is going to be totally different and you just laugh about this, you know. And I thought he was really wrong then, but the idea of doing it for 5 years was just amazing. But it was true, you know. And he also said that, you know, eventually you're going to find Alcoholics Anonymous does the same thing for you that Scotch used to do, you know. And I knew it was really wrong then. But it's true. It's true. I mean, it's like Barbara, you know, Jerry, he was talking about, you know, the whole idea, everything that she is, she learned here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the way that she deals with herself and deals with others, you know. I mean, all my relationships involved are affected. You know, I apply the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to all the problems in my life. And usually with some form of success. You know, I mean, I'm in a relationship, well, nothing's perfect, you know. I wish it were, but it's not actually, you know. And I mean, I thank God for it, because I wouldn't have the relationship that I have today if I didn't have this program. I would have cut and run a long time ago. But because of the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm allowed to understand my part of a situation and work with my part and understand her without having to worry about her having to change herself. And it's the same thing about the work that I've done since I've come to Alcoholics Anonymous, which has been kind of an interesting up and down chart. In you know, I know I'm running out of time, but I just want you to know, if you're new, my life continues to prosper, to be I become freer and freer because of this program, to the degree that I utilize the steps and apply the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous to my life. And it's true. My life has totally changed. I'm open to almost anything in my life today, and I have been for a long time. My life has changed over and over again, you know. And that's all I wanted before I came into this program, is just something different, just a change in my life, you know. And it's just it happens over and over and over again, you know. It just amazes me. I'm doing things today that are absolutely impossible for the guy who came walking through this program 27 years ago plus. I mean, when I came in this program, I was just a dreary, dying old man, you know, and I'm a hell of a lot younger today than I was then. Thanks for letting me share.
Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. Shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.